Good evening. Welcome and a happy Monday to everyone. Thank you very much for watching. Today's episode is very exciting. We've already mentioned him on this show last week for all those who are watching closely. But may I present to you, it is Mike Richard. He's the founder of Talk About It, Mate.
Hello.
Hello, Mike.
Hiya, how are you doing? I'm brilliant. I'm brilliant.
I'm glad to hear it. How's your weekend?
Yeah, not too bad, except for trying to get into playing football again when I'm unfit. It's I don't know, it's that New Year lag, isn't it? But I feel like I'm getting through it now.
Okie doke. So you're back at Man versus Fat, like me, unfortunately. Yeah. So did you enjoy your break over Christmas and now back into it, or still a bit of a lag?
Yeah, like I've probably enjoyed it a bit too much when you get on the scales and you realise you've put on so much weight. But now I've got to like start all over again. But no, it was good. You know, like the kind of work that I do mentally, you're drained. So I definitely switched off for a couple of weeks, and but it's just takes time to get back into it, as I'm sure you know.
I pretty much took the whole 2 weeks off and just forgot all about Man versus Fat. But I'm quite glad I got myself back to within 400 grams of my weight. So hopefully by next week I'll be back to where I should be. Good man. Were you there on Thursday?
Yeah, but I think I put on about 4 kilos. So it's like the worst I've ever done. So yeah, it's like the opposite. But I'll get there.
Yeah, I believe in you. You've done it before. I believe in you.
Yeah.
So you're the founder of Talk About It, Mate. What is Talk About It, Mate?
It's I should know how to answer this question better now after all these years. But it's an organisation, a social enterprise, which supports people with their mental health, and it's evolved over the years. It's a peer support network of people who are becoming friends, but our kind of niche, I suppose, or our expertise is aimed at men and men's groups, and that's gone from just a casual meeting 6-7 years ago to like my job now, and I run meetings in Salford, and it's there's definitely a need for it, but it's good. I've been on the phone to a few guys today, and it's growing slowly but surely, and it's really making a difference, and I love doing it. Yeah.
Brilliant. So what made you set it up?
I think a lot of my own struggles is certainly through like my late teens and into my 20s. But it's that feeling of being alone and whatever it is that you're going through. And I don't know, I just never had anyone I could talk to about it. So then I thought, if I can't find what I'm looking for, I'll set it up myself.
Yeah. And you say it's mainly for men. Why do you think there needs to be a group mainly for men? Are men not catered for, or what's the crack?
In many ways, no. I mean, the landscape is a lot different now than it was 6-7 years ago when I set out to do this. It certainly gets a lot of attention in the media, which is great. And I think, there's a lot of men out there, a lot of people out there suffering in silence. And I think it's great to highlight that. But yeah, I still think that there are men who might, because of certain masculine stereotypes maybe, but who are at risk of not opening up or thinking that talking is weak. And it depends on, your experiences and where you're from and lots of factors. But the more we can shout about it, and I think the hardest thing is to convey is what it's actually like when the men are there. And it's actually quite an upbeat atmosphere, even though we might talk about difficult things. The men are becoming skilled and empowered at sharing. And I think that's why men are told from about 7 or 8, like, stop being a mummy's boy, like toughen up. And so it goes from getting all that care to it being cut off. And why men then develop certain things that haven't been attended to until later on in life.
So is it popular? Do you find a lot of men come in, unexpected men? What do you find? What's your experience?
Yeah. It's worked with kind of lots of different demographics throughout Talk About It and through my own counselling work. So a lot more younger men coming through now, which is great. like early 20s, and I think more from like an empowerment coaching perspective to give them that psychological edge maybe, but that's a great thing to see. But yeah, in your stereotypical tougher guys or your older blokes, they've been some of the best people to work with, because it's we all have a certain way of being, but when you put them in there in the right environment, you can't shut them up really. They get talking, they just love doing it. So yeah, loads of different kinds of men.
Well, I suppose, like you say, people feel empowered, but that's because you set up basically above the door is you are allowed to talk. Whereas obviously when we just go to the pub with our mates, then you don't, like, not everyone feels empowered because, like you say, you don't want to feel like weak or vulnerable in front of your mates. You want to put on a show. You probably just laugh it off or just kind of blame other stuff, or probably most personally would be work. Just say, "Oh, work is," and you just believe your mates because you don't know what really they do at work. So I imagine work is quite a cover-all. So when people first walk through the door, are they're like, can they immediately open up, or does it take a bit of work?
Nowadays, a lot of the gentlemen are like referred into me, so through different like organisations, either through the GP or through like social prescribers. So I might have called them on the phone already and had a bit of rapport. But yeah, sometimes every man is different. Some men will come in and they'll start chatting straight away. Some men won't. So we had a gentleman in one of our groups, younger guy, didn't really say much for 5 months, 6 months. Like he was there, he was joining in, but by a year down the line, his confidence has grown. He's getting into work, and it's great to see that kind of development in these people. And it's a joy to watch, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. So you just mentioned social prescribing.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's they have different names for it, but they're like community connectors. So basically, it's a way of connecting people who may be struggling, let's say low level mental health. If it's very, very serious, you might get elevated to certain services that can cater for that. But if you've got, there may be anxiety or depression, or they call it mild to moderate needs, not severe, then you might they'll say, look, this is what's on in your local area. So it might be that somebody, for their well-being, goes to a gardening group or a walking group or a craft group, or to a men's group, and that can, because I think loneliness and isolation after the pandemic are on par, if not higher, of a problem than mental health. I think the mental health is connected to that, and once you kind of address that, they might say, okay, I want to try this thing, and then I've had like hundreds of men sent to me, and they might not all come, but you just say, look, come and have a brew, have a chat, and it means that we don't have to be promoting our services, say, through social media, because it's being done through official channels for us now.
So what official channels? Say I had these symptoms, mild symptoms. What would I do? Would I see the doctor or what?
Yeah, that's the first port of call for any man who's struggling, is watching this. Like, don't be afraid. I mean, I know it's daunting. I've been through that. I'm sure you've experienced it yourself, but you are worthy enough to go to, because men always put themselves bottom of the list, don't they? And that's one of the reasons why we have to target it. Let everyone else go in front of me. But, I'm struggling. The GP might then put you in touch with an organisation. So in Salford, it's called Wellbeing Matters, and they're great. The staff are great. They're like not social workers, but they'll meet you for a brew in your community, or they'll call you and they'll explore your options with you. And so if it's like for a mental health need and you're a man, one of the things that might get offered to you is talk about it, mate group. And then you might end up, if you agree to that, you might end up getting a call from someone like myself. But they did most of the time, because we do our groups in the daytime, it's for people who might not obviously be working 9 to 5. But there are great services out there in the evening for men. It's just we feel we're better off at doing groups in the community in the daytime.
Okay. So how did you said you were on this list of like men's group. How did you get to be on that list?
I think it just by consistently building up our offer. So, you know, like it didn't immediately start in Salford. I was living, you know, South Manchester, and started up just offering groups in, like, we'd meet in a coffee shop or a Wetherspoons, and we'd advertise it through meetup.com. And then, you know, pre-pandemic, that started to really pick up some traction, and we were launching in different areas, face to face, more established, you know, not formal, but definitely, you know, we'd book a room out and we'd get 10 guys together, and that was more in the evenings. But then we found with the pandemic, obviously everything went online. They were hugely popular, and we were quite flexible about when we could do the groups. But coming out the other side, it was the need for, certainly in, you know, very, very like kind of working class communities and places like Salford, they wanted to do groups in person. And that's because obviously with the pandemic and everything, that's what people were missing. And as soon as the restrictions were lifted, it just took off in Salford. So all of our work is kind of centralized in Salford now because the need is there, and we've got plenty of guys who want to use it.
Okay. So is it for you, is it a full-time job, or because I remember you were a primary school teacher, you're still doing that, or?
No, I gave that up kind of in the middle of COVID, and like I think I went to one school one day and there was like 2 classes in, the rest were off, and like there was like no other teachers. It was like a ghost town, and I thought, well, this isn't the best time to keep doing supply teaching, and I was kind of winding down anyway. So yeah, then I started to train to do my counselling. So then I studied at Salford, and I'm a qualified counsellor now. So I split my time between doing Talk About It Mate groups, the 3 groups I do in the week, and also the private work that I do. So it's worked out really well for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So your private work, is that one-to-one, or is that groups as well, or?
Just one-to-one counselling, but it's great because everyone's got something to offer in your own way. So, you know, for me, being a guy who's say slightly under 40, there's not many young male counsellors in Manchester, for example, and like working class, you know, things like that. So we need to make therapy more male friendly. That's not to say all my clients are males, but it's I think that there's more options now for guys to access therapy, and a lot of people don't know what it entails, because if you want it privately, you have to pay, but it can go a bit deeper than what, and in terms of the amount of sessions that you can have compared to what you would get if you were referred through your doctor, because obviously it's limited what you can get if you go through the NHS, even though it's a good service.
Yeah. So what? Obviously, if I went to a GP, would they offer me you as Talk About It Mate, or you as a private counsellor, and how would I make that decision?
Well, if you went through the GP, you'd be offered the social prescribing and the things that could come that way, or then you'd be put on a waiting list for NHS therapies. So that's not private at all. So because it would be free, but you'd have to wait a long time depending on your area, and then depending on the nature of your concern, you would be then assigned to the right service. So most areas in the UK have something called IAPS, which is Initial Access to Psychological Therapies. And you'll be on a waiting list. So let's say best case scenario, 8 to 12 weeks, but you know, it could be 6 months longer. And then you might get, say, 6 sessions with a certain therapist. And usually it's a kind of therapy like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, where it might follow a bit more of a set structure, a few more worksheets and things like that, which I've had it myself when I struggled years ago, and it can be quite good in the short term. But also there are other kinds of therapies which aren't always readily available on the NHS. So by going private, you can have greater access to that and not have to wait. So, you know, person-centered is just talking therapies, but there's so much more than that. But a lot of people don't realize that that's part of counselling as well, because it's not always available.
Okay. So obviously I know you through Man versus Fat. So which came first, Man versus Fat or Talk About It Mate? I
think Man versus Fat came first because I was living in London at the time, and that's when I started all them years ago. Yeah, so I was in like Leyton Orient League, like that's where we played next to their stadium, and then I did quite well to begin with, and then like I was moving back, and I was on the waiting list for waiting for Salford to start. And then, when we first started, I was in the Salford League. And I did the first couple of years, I did really well because I was like, about to get married and, had all the motivation in the world. And it got down to like a really obscenely low weight for me. And then I stopped for a few years, through the pandemic and stuff. And it's probably the right time for me to get back into it now, I think.
Okay. So like chicken and egg scenario, which came first for you, the mental health side or the kind of weight gain, or are they part and parcel? Or
I think they were both really important. I think about 8 years ago, I had like a mental breakdown, and like I knew that like it was accumulation of not talking about it and not, valuing myself enough to get help and support. So there was job problems I was having, relationship problems, but also like the way I viewed myself, and and I was never happy about my weight, and my self-esteem and self-worth were quite low. So I started to exercise more as well as starting to have like private therapy, and they kind of went hand in hand. And then when I moved back up to Manchester, it kind of continued, except for I was enjoying it so much, and I'd set up Talk About It Mate. I was like, I want to do this all the time now. And it became not just a pet project, it became like a career change for me. So I'm so grateful.
Well, yeah. And now if it's a job that you kind of love, as opposed to, I imagine you didn't love primary school teaching quite as much.
Yeah. I mean, I love being a teacher, and I thought I love doing it, and like the kind of craft of teaching. And I think when I started training and when I was an NQT and I was nearly qualified, like the teachers, they were older teachers and they were about to retire. So I learned from like an older generation, but then obviously the whole profession changes and it became less about your abilities as a teacher and other things that I think I just couldn't handle the stress at that time of my life, and it was eating away at me. I was changing as a person, and I'm glad that I've leaned into something where I've had personal experience, but I've also gained the technical skills to help others. Yeah.
I like how kind of open and honest you are about it, because as you said, men don't generally talk about this. And I remember when I first started Man vs. Fat, and Sven was our coach at the time. She got us taught to kind of write a kind of, what would you call it? A kind of a blog or some kind of background. And I remember yours quite vividly. And yours said that you used to run like a 10K before games, just because you were that kind of worried about not losing weight, or to ensure that you had lost weight. Is that still the case? Or?
No, I couldn't run 10K now. I can barely do 5. But yeah, I think I got very obsessed with it, because I think I was, you start to see results and you can get kind of obsessed with that. Like,
I was the same, yeah.
Yeah, and Sven was great. I remember when I went to Australia to visit my friend, and she'd moved back out there, and I met up with her and some of her friends, and it was great. Like, and in that motivation, but for me, it kind of spilled over a little bit, and then that hence why I had the big gap and not coming back. But so I now need to almost not become more obsessed, but like a little bit more, do it the way I did do it a few years ago, because age, I don't think age is a massive barrier. I know your body breaks down, but I think it's the mental like approach to it is that I want to change. We'll probably have a few more injuries and things like that, but I think for me, it is as simple as eating less and moving more. But it's easier said than done, isn't it? And
if it was like that, if it was easy as that, then there wouldn't be any need for Man versus Fat, would there?
Exactly. But I think it's the community element to it. I think because of it's always gone hand in hand. Like quite a lot of the guys who became friends with initially from the Salford League, they helped out a lot with Talk About It Mate, certainly in the pandemic. And I'm super grateful for those guys, because they helped us spread the word out, through different networks, and they like run our WhatsApp groups and things like that now, for more of the people who connect digitally. So I think they're so intertwined, and we've had a few charity matches and been invited to tournaments, and we've put a Talk About It Mate team in, and we run some extra games, which is for everyone. But if there are a few guys there who've been trained in certain things, if someone wants to talk, it's there. So it's great that they're so connected, and anything that's good for physical well-being and mental well-being should go hand in hand, I think.
Yeah. And it resonates with me because I, like you, the first time I went to Man vs. Fat, I was single. So basically, it's the only thing I had to concentrate on.
Yeah.
And I went too hard. And like you, I got down to, so I'm 100, or I was 124 when I started. I got down to 103. And because I'd not been that weight for a long time, it did look weird. It looked weird for me. But now I'm with my girlfriend. I can't go as hard, which is a good thing because my life was just revolving around calorie counting and running.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I did do the Great North Run. It did motivate me to do that, but I kind of need to kind of have the same or similar results, but not kind of for it to take over my life, which is what it did at the time, because I had nothing else to do. And like, I've never been diagnosed with depression, but I was certainly self-diagnosed because I didn't want to leave the house unless it was for running or for kind of Man versus Fat. And it was kind of vicious circle because I'd put on weight and my clothes didn't fit. So my clothes didn't fit, so I didn't go out. So instead, I went to Morrison's and got all the baked goods and all the pop and whatever. And then next week, I got invited out, and I still couldn't go out because I was probably bigger than I was. And so it wasn't until kind of my New Year's resolution in 2018 was to do something about it, and that's how I kind of got involved with Man versus Fat. So, but like you, I got down to that weight. I thought, right, I've smashed this. I wasn't where I wanted to be, but I was like, I know how to. And then I don't know whether it's the pandemic or the lack of accountability on a weekly basis, but I kind of went back up again, and here we are.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's important to be. I try to say to myself, it's important to be kind to yourself, isn't it? To get there. Like, I've never been one for tough love from others, giving it to me. I can't, but then I speak quite harshly to myself sometimes, and it's like, well, that's not going to work. Like, come on, I need to be more, speak to myself as kindly as I want to speak to others, I suppose. And I think there's a message in that, certainly for men, but certainly for a lot of people. Yeah.
Well, that brings me round to, because I was just reading your website, because as much as I know about it, and I've kind of been following you on Facebook and whatever, I've never actually looked at your website. So I thought, obviously, in kind of preparation. And the thing that struck me that I've never kind of heard before is that you use a self-compassionate approach, or maybe you did when you first kind of suffered for mental health. So what's that about, and what did it mean for you?
I think it's changing that narrative, and I think this is where working with men is the thing, is that like we're trained to be kind of hard. Like I've never, like, I was never like a hard guy. Like, I was kind of mainly brought up by my mum, and like, I was a bit softer and sensitive, but actually those are the qualities that are paying off for me now in terms of my work. Like, I always had that. But back then I probably was bullied for that. Like, I was made to feel like I'm less of a man. And actually, you're hard until you're not hard, aren't you? So that works to a certain extent. But what else is there? So self-compassion is to allow yourself that compassion. Say, I was this way. I've made mistakes. And it's not to say it's wrong to be like masculinity as a concept. There's loads of good stuff in there. So I know people say, oh, toxic masculinity, but that's not saying that all masculinity is toxic. No. Put that on the record. Is that there are loads of great aspects of masculinity, like hard work and honor and dedication. And you look at these guys tough guys and family men, they're amazing things. But when times get tough, maybe that approach needs to shift, and we need to be a little bit kinder to ourselves. And self-compassion, and once we model it in a group, and one thing that I'll notice is that when someone in the group will not break down, but will be very, very vulnerable, none of the other guys in the group then pounce on them and make them feel any worse. It never happens. So they'll all rally round. So why can't we then take that and kind of use it on ourselves as well? Like, we think everyone's going to slag us off or whatever, but when we're in a group of people who've experienced that also, it's very rare that would happen. It's like opening up about struggling with weight loss, like in a community of people who have also struggled with their weight, of course you're going to get a positive like back. So self-compassion is really, really difficult. We have to unlearn like behaviors, and that takes time. Therapy is something that can help with that. What we need are people around us to say it's all right, but we need, when we start doing it for ourselves, it's huge, because I don't think it's interesting that we can be very compassionate to others, but then can't to ourselves. And I think that like once we start, like I as soon as I started being more compassionate to myself outwardly, I thought I'm not being as kind to others, but that's not, I'm just kind in a more radical way. Like I'm very fierce with my compassion and kindness to others. And that's, you know, like when I know something's wrong with the guys, then I'll know to step in and know to like, but most of the time you can let it play out and they'll support each other. So compassion's hard, but it does make a big difference.
So what groups do you have? What kind of sessions do you run them all? Tell me what happens.
Yeah, so we've had different ones over the years and different like spin-off groups and online groups. But at the moment, our core offer is kind of 3 men's groups in Salford, and there are in the daytime. So our main one's in Walkden, and that's on a Tuesday afternoon, 1 till 3, and Fridays in Eccles, 1 till 3. And we've got a new group starting. It's not all confirmed yet, but in the next month, hopefully, in Langworthy, Cornerstone there. So it's kind of not far from Salford Precinct. But again, that'll be a similar structure. And a lot of the volunteers will have attended groups and be helping me out in other groups. So I have worked with organisations like Salford Pride to do things like LGBT sessions. Same concept, maybe shorter, meetings. So they're as and when. Right. But the main offer is the men's groups, and we've got a good range of ages. Like our youngest guy is probably early 20s. Our oldest guy's 87, I think. So wow. You get them all mixing in. So it tends to be older guys because of it's a daytime group. There might be people who are semi-retired or long-term health conditions, but they don't feel like they matter, and they do when they come to the group. So that's why it's hugely important.
Wow. What was I going to say? So that's a typical session. What's the typical day for you running? Talk about it, mate.
I'll usually get there, set up, say an hour before it starts, and I'll put out the kind of refreshments, and I'll do a little bit of ringing around to know who's coming, and so I know what to expect. And I'll kind of prepare some resources sometimes, like we might be looking at a topic like compassion, for example. I like a little quote of the week, and we all look at that, and then they all check in, so they say how they're feeling out of 10. And then if anyone's got anything that they want to mention before we start, they get the chance to do that. And then I'll let them, they'll kind of go off in little groups or clusters. But then we stop for plenty of brews, and it kind of, the 2 hours goes really, really quickly, because it's not just, it's sitting in a circle like you'd see it in an American TV show. Although that's becoming more popular here now. As an entry level, that's quite tough for people. They'd turn away if it was as formal as that. But there is elements of that. We just do it around the table with biscuits.
Always with the biscuits.
Yeah. No, you honestly, you get them in and they're like, oh, and you start giving them biscuits and sandwiches, and they're like, oh, this is great. I'll come next week. And that's the way to get them in. Oh, yeah.
So what about, I saw on your website you've got a podcast. Are you still doing that?
Not done it for a while. It was, I did it on my phone for like 2 series. It was great. And then we tried to do it like a bit more official, proper with John Wright, and then no one listened to it, so we got rid of it. So it's all John's fault. It's because it was kind of like me and him having the conversations that we'd have in the groups. And then he made me record videos and stuff, with his acting background. But no, I think that's probably done for now, because I think podcasts have moved on. But I'm proud of what we did, because we'd have just genuine conversations, and it was great, and it was good to share with the community on WhatsApp and things like that. But yeah, I think my podcasting days are behind me.
Well, you say that, but we had Stu on last week. I don't know if you saw, but he said you were on his podcast, the Man vs. Fat podcast. So it's not necessarily, and he's weirdly, that day he was talking to Roman about starting it up again. So.
Oh, good to know. I mean, I don't mind the chat. It's nice. I haven't done something like this for a while. But yeah, it was exciting to kind of do it. And I think the whole thing was about real conversations. And for me, I know because I work kind of in the industry, and when mental health is featured in the media or with a celebrity, I know it raises awareness, but for me, it just doesn't grab me. It's very rare that like I find it. Like, but I love hearing genuine people, like I you know, like the unpolished diamonds, like the guys that come to our group, like you can laugh, cry. It's just they've got such stories, and the blokes in Salford have just got like it is hilarious, but they've got it's real touching stories, and for me that's just what I want to be doing. It's the same as when I work privately. I just love your everyday situations. I find it very hard to connect with, as much as they're not doubting the celebrities have got a story to tell. And it's great when something is done to raise the awareness. It's just I wish we put like real people front and center, because they're like absolute heroes. Like these guys I've worked with who I'd say are some of the strongest people I've ever met in my entire life. And I mean, maybe they don't want to shout about it, and that's also fine. But I just think it's about like it's an integrity thing for me.
True, but obviously you see if you some kind of Big Brother person is going to attract more people than John from Salford.
Oh yeah, like to raise the awareness. Like I just wish that what the media could do, in my opinion, is make that step from raising the awareness to actually getting people. So to get, because that's what's going to get the bums on the seats. Yes, and like you look at Andy's Man Club, who are the leading men's group in the country, featured on Emmerdale. That's brilliant. That's great that they're getting the press. You know, like a character in the show goes to a meeting. Everyone knows what that's all about, because the people need to see what, like, it's similar with therapy. It's not like you can record it because it's confidentiality, but if people see what it entails and, you know, how it can have that massive impact, the only way sometimes to experience it, it's like when you're recommending Man v Fat to someone, is to come down and experience it. And I think once people are actually experiencing it, there'll be more people who go from, oh yeah, I'm interested in talking about my mental health, to actually doing it and actually helping other people.
Yeah. So if I wanted to do it, what would I do now? What would you recommend?
If you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, to be part of Talk About It, mate. To be, I don't know, a client, a customer. What do you call?
Yeah, you mean you could like go on to like your online search, find a therapist, or I could recommend someone to you. I think
no, I want to be with Talk About It, mate. What?
With Talk About It, mate. But unfortunately, our groups are in the daytime. But you could connect you, for example, to our WhatsApp group, and you could talk to a lot of people in there. You know, so there is a way of getting involved. It's just now the way our work's taken us is more community based. But like for yourself, someone who say works in the daytime. There's an Andy's Man Club group in Manchester City Centre every Monday. They're all over the country. You know, there's other great groups out there like Directions for Men, Mentel, loads of good organisations that are out there. There's a really good app you can get on your phone called Hub of Hope. And you put in your postcode and what you might be looking for, say anxiety, depression, and it'll tell you what's in your area. And so, you know, there is support out there. Or people can connect online, which is great. And I think that's been great for setting up events and people sharing on their social media. But yeah, for you, unfortunately, I wish I did an evening group. But if you ever wanted to, I can get you some training. And that's the thing. A lot of the time, it depends on volunteers and people stepping up and saying, I want to get involved.
Okay. Yeah. So it's been running 7 or 8 years, did you say?
Yeah, about 6-7 years, I think. Yeah, since I set it up, maybe a bit longer. Yeah, 7-8 years from when it was just like 6 people meeting in the Weatherspoons. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's been the highlights for you, or the kind of low points in kind of doing this?
Once I was messaging the guy who was meeting us, and I was like, "Oh, we're meeting in this part of this pub at this time," and then this guy walked into the room and was like, "Oh, I'm Mike from the meetup," and he was like, he wasn't there for a meetup, he was there for a date, and he was like, "Oh, you're not my date," and he was like looking at this thing on the phone, and he wasn't impressed with the way that I looked, obviously, and he kind of like walked out. So that was a massive highlight. No, do you know, it's really hard. I think for me, it's the actual men's groups to see how they've grown. And I've been invited to speak at places like I spoke at the Lowry to people in the NHS, and that was like a big highlight professionally for me. I think that one of the highlights was the pandemic when we got like loads of people involved.
You don't hear that a lot. One of the highlights is the pandemic.
Do you know, it's really interesting. Like, it was hard because we were starting and I had this big, like, basically I just lost it. I was like, wow, why I put 6 months of work in to set up these meetings and then we weren't allowed to go out. And then a few of the guys like Martin and John were like really, really like, come on, there's a way forward here. And then we worked at it and then we set up the online meetings. So for me, that was a huge highlight. I think that 2020, because then we were just knocking out online meetings every Wednesday, every Sunday. Sometimes we were getting like 16 guys, 17 guys. We were splitting into breakout rooms. I was training facilitators. Then we had a women's group and a book group and all these other things. A mixed group. It was just like prolific because there's like about 50 people who were just like messaging every day. And at that time, that's what we needed. And it was a great time because everyone rallied round.
So is there no kind of call for an online group anymore, or is it just better face to face? Or
I think that ship has sailed. I'm not saying that there isn't, like, but I think there are organisations who are set up for that. But I always say that when some people do it every few months, just like there's 3 or 4 of them who just like meet up on Zoom and might watch a movie together over Zoom. I don't know how they do that, but I think it just takes someone to say, does anybody feel like I personally don't do them because of my schedule, but I think communities are started by a group or a cluster of people who want the same thing, and usually I'd say once 4 or 5 people express an interest, you're onto a winner. Build it and they will come.
Indeed. So what's next for talk about, mate, or you? What, either?
For me, apart from losing weight, obviously. Just professionally, just keep it ticking over. I think my skills are always improving, but and the private work, I think, will take care of itself because I'm only doing that a couple of days a week. But talk about it, mate. It's a lot of small organisations like this don't make it this far. That's what I'm most proud of, is that like we've just quietly gone about our business and found a way to make it, get these referrals through. I think would be to expand. And I would love to have more groups in Salford, train up more guys, and the end goal would be to get some kind of what's called a commission, where we would then be kind of snapped up, if you say, like a transfer fee by the NHS, for example. And I know that's hard to come by, but I think we've been doing this a number of years where we'd become part of their service, and it would be like an official pathway. I mean, that's a big goal, but I think funding is hard to come by. We get money from the lottery and other sources, but it's hard to get nowadays. And it would be nice to be commissioned where they say, right, we're going to pay for your service for 3 years. That includes all staffing costs. So we could really kind of up level that. And I think it can be done because we're not going anywhere. It doesn't show any signs of slowing down. So,
well, I hope you're successful in that. So obviously everyone has been watching and listening and they want to know more about Talk About It, Mate. Where would they find information?
Yeah, I would say don't go on Facebook because I never check that. Probably Instagram. If you want Instagram, at Talk About It, Mate, because it's just on the phone, and so if I get a notification, I'll get it. And we could have a chat or whatever, and I'll point you in the right direction. A lot of the job is signposting, so if we can. Like, if people ask me questions all the time, if we can't cater for it, there's a chance that we might know who could. So, I'm happy to signpost, and if anyone's got a relative or a friend who's thinking about counselling, I'm happy to talk to them or point them in the right direction, because I think I would have liked someone to have done that for me. Because I wish if I'd have gone into therapy sooner, I would have, I don't know, but it happens when it happens, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah. Just before we go, I don't know, can you see the comments at all?
Oh, no. Who's watching? Do you remember
David Mintz from
the
goalkeeper?
Good guy.
He commented on the show last week with Stu Normansell, and he's saying that it's a great initiative. Talk about it, mate. So you've got a big fan. So it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you more. Obviously, I know you through football, but I don't know you that well, and it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you better. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for featuring us, and keep up the good work.
David Mintz has just said keep up the good work. So yeah,
great mind.
Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. See you later.
See you soon.
Bye. So that was Mike Richard from Talk About It, Mate. Absolute gentleman and running a very good cause. As you said, if you want more information, then go on to @TalkAboutItMate on Instagram. That's it from me today. Thank you very much for watching. Tomorrow at 6 p.m, we've got the last episode of Giggle Niblets, my podcast, or our podcast, and I'll be joined by John and Gemma, two of the writers and also stars, and we'll be listening to episode 7 together and just chatting, giving you a bit of backstage goss. So that's at 6 p.m. tomorrow. So again, if you want to come on this live stream, if you want to come and have a chat, then let me know and I can get you on very soon. But otherwise, have a lovely evening. Thank you to all people watching live and the people watching on catch up, and have a great day. And I will see you again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.